Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into the hazy world of Victorian England. You're standing at the edge of a manicured garden, where the air is thick with the scent of roses, trimmed hedges, and something suspiciously bland. A grand tea party is unfolding before your eyes, all delicate laughter and the faint clink of porcelain cups. You spot a long table draped in crisp linen, laden with little sandwiches stacked like polite towers, tiny, neat, and filled with the thinnest slices of cucumber you've ever seen. The sun filters softly through the leaves, dappled shadows flickering over hats with absurdly large feathers. And as you lean closer, you can't help but wonder, why on earth did anyone think these sandwiches were the height of sophistication? I mean, it's literally just cucumbers and bread. Honestly, you probably wouldn't survive a Victorian afternoon tea, especially if you tried to eat more than 3 of those dainty little things without offending someone's delicate sensibilities. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it right now? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step onto the gravel path, the crunch beneath your shoes oddly satisfying, and wander toward the gathering. There's a woman in a lavender dress balancing a cup of tea on a saucer so fragile it seems like a stiff breeze might crack it. You hear her murmur something about elegance, her voice a lilting whisper like a breeze through silk curtains. Nearby, a man in a tailcoat nods solemnly, as if he's just been handed the secret to immortality. And then you see it, on a silver tray, stacked neatly like miniature green-tinted bricks, cucumber sandwiches. Crustless, of course. Pale, almost translucent slices, barely there, pressed between 2 paper-thin pieces of white bread. It's not just a snack, it's a statement. You pick one up. It's cool to the touch, almost damp. The bread gives way like a sigh, and the cucumber inside is so subtle, it's like trying to taste a ghost. You chew thoughtfully, wondering if it's the flavor, or the complete lack of it, that made this little bite so revered. A clean, straightforward tone, with very little vocal ornamentation. Warm timbre, rich and comforting, creating a sense of closeness and intimacy. Slight nasal resonance, a gentle nasal quality that adds character without sounding harsh. Slowly pacing, 100 to 120 words per minute. Deliberate, unhurried delivery. Each word is given space, fostering relaxation. Monotone rhythm. Consistent pitch and volume throughout, like a soft lullaby that soothes rather than excites. A lady nearby leans in, her perfume a cloud of violets, and she confides in a hushed tone that the cucumber sandwich was the thing to serve at any respectable tea party. It wasn't just about taste, oh no, it was about refinement, about showing the world you had the means to waste time and resources on something so, well, so utterly impractical. I mean, really, have you ever tried slicing a cucumber thin enough to impress a duchess? It's a whole ordeal. There's a reason they had servants for that. And the bread. It had to be soft as a down pillow, made from the finest flour money could buy. White bread, mind you, none of that coarse brown peasant stuff. That was for people who actually needed nutrition. As you nibble, a light breeze carries the faint scent of roses mixed with the sharper note of cucumber vines from a nearby greenhouse. You glance over and spot it, a glass palace glinting in the sun, home to rows of perfectly straight cucumber plants growing in neat lines like soldiers on parade. The Victorians, it seems, were obsessed with these things. Growing cucumbers out of season wasn't just a hobby, it was a flex. A way to say, look at me, I have a heated greenhouse, and I can afford to waste it on a vegetable that's 95% water. You imagine someone casually mentioning their latest cucumber harvest at a dinner party, the way people today might brag about their sourdough starter or a trip to Bali. You can almost hear the faint strains of a string quartet in the background, the notes floating through the warm air, mixing with the faint clatter of teaspoons against china. A little girl in a starched white dress skips by, nearly bumping into an elderly gentleman who steadies himself with a cane topped by an elaborate silver handle. He gives her a fond, if slightly disapproving glance before returning to his sandwich, as if the act of eating it connects him to some higher plane of civilization. And yet, as you take another bite, you can't help but feel a tiny pang of curiosity. Was it really just about taste? Or was there something else going on here? Maybe it wasn't the cucumber at all. Maybe it was the ritual, the performance, the way you had to hold the sandwich just so, fingers curved delicately like you were plucking a harp string, or the way you were supposed to take small, measured bites, never too eager, always composed, lest you risk looking like you hadn't eaten in days, which, for the record, was terribly unfashionable back then. Of course, not everyone was in on the joke. The cucumber sandwich became a symbol of exclusivity, an edible badge of who was in and who was out. And if you didn't understand it, well, that just proved the point, didn't it? Some historians still debate whether the whole thing was an elaborate prank on the working class or simply an accident of culinary history, a vegetable that happened to grow in the right place, at the right time, with the right people to prop it up as a sign of elegance. You sigh and glance around, wondering if anyone else feels the quiet absurdity of it all. But no, the guests are too busy sipping their tea, dabbing their lips with embroidered napkins, and discussing the latest scandal in the Illustrated London News. You realize that in a world obsessed with propriety, even a cucumber sandwich could become a weapon, a way to say, I belong and you do not. And as the wind stirs the leaves and a faint church bell tolls in the distance, you find yourself drifting, just a little, into the strange, sleepy logic of it all. Why not make a vegetable into a status symbol? Why not declare a tasteless sandwich the height of sophistication? After all, it's not about the cucumber, is it? It's about the performance, the ritual, the delicate, crumb-free facade of a society that prized appearances above all else. And as you breathe in the faint scent of roses and freshly mowed grass, you know the night has only just begun. The sun hangs low now, casting long shadows across the lawn as the scent of freshly mown grass mingles with the faint, almost watery fragrance of cucumber. You wander through the garden, your shoes crunching softly over the gravel path, and there's a sense of quiet expectation in the air, like the world is holding its breath, waiting for the next cup of tea to be poured. You pause by a marble statue of a cherub, its chubby face staring eternally at nothing, and listen to the murmurs of conversation drifting over from the tea tables. It's a peculiar sound, low, refined, like the gentle rustle of silk dresses or the clink of silver teaspoons. And every now and then you catch a phrase that makes you raise an eyebrow. Ah, yes, cucumber sandwiches, such a refined choice. Or, one simply cannot serve anything else at a proper afternoon tea. It's odd, isn't it, how a sandwich so bland, so devoid of any real flavor, became a symbol of aristocratic elegance. You pluck a leaf from a nearby shrub absent-mindedly, feeling the rough texture between your fingers, and let your thoughts drift. It wasn't always this way. Once upon a time, the cucumber wasn't a symbol of refinement. It was a vegetable, plain and simple. But in Victorian England, even something as humble as a cucumber could be swept up into the swirling currents of class, status, and the performance of being, well, better. You take a seat at the edge of a table, the wood warm beneath your fingertips, and peer at a plate of sandwiches arranged like a tiny edible skyline. The bread is soft, almost impossibly so, and the cucumber slices are paper thin, glistening faintly in the afternoon sun. It's not just the sandwiches that feel out of place, it's the whole ritual. The careful pouring of tea, the delicate napkins folded just so, the way everyone seems to hover on the brink of conversation, waiting for a cue that never quite arrives. It's like being trapped in a play where everyone forgot their lines, but the show must go on regardless. You take a seat at the edge of a table, the wood warm beneath your fingertips, and peer at a plate of sandwiches, arranged like a tiny edible skyline. The bread is soft, almost impossibly so, and the cucumber slices are paper thin, glistening faintly in the afternoon sun. It's not just the sandwiches that feel out of place, it's the whole ritual. The careful pouring of tea, the delicate napkins folded just so, the way everyone seems to hover on the brink of conversation, waiting for a cue that never quite arrives. It's like being trapped in a play where everyone forgot their lines, but the show must go on regardless. As you take a slow bite, the cucumber cool against your tongue, you remember something peculiar. There's a reason cucumbers became so fashionable. In the mid-19th century, greenhouses, those grand glass palaces, became a thing. Wealthy Victorians, desperate to show off their prosperity, would grow cucumbers out of season, just to prove they could. It wasn't about the vegetable. It was about control, about bending nature to your will. And if you could serve fresh cucumbers in the dead of winter, well, that was a kind of quiet power flex. Like driving an electric car today, or showing off your limited edition sneakers. Only, with fewer batteries and more sandwiches. You glance at a nearby gentleman in a waistcoat so tight, it looks like it might pop a button at any moment. He's holding a sandwich between two fingers, pinky extended, and nodding along to a conversation about the Queen's latest garden party. And there it is, that sense of quiet superiority, the unspoken message that we know what's elegant, and you don't. It's funny, isn't it, how something so simple can become a social signal. A sandwich as a code, a way to say, without saying a word, that you belong to a certain world. And if you didn't understand the code, well, that was rather the point. Some historians still argue about this. They debate whether the cucumber sandwich was really a status symbol, or whether it was just a fad that got a little out of hand. But you can't help but feel, as you watch the careful choreography of this garden party, that it was more than a coincidence. The cucumber wasn't chosen for its taste. It was chosen because it was delicate, fragile, hard to grow, a little absurd, really. And that absurdity made it perfect for a society obsessed with appearances. A breeze rustles the leaves above you, and you catch a whiff of cucumber, mingled with the sharp tang of coal smoke drifting from a distant chimney. You shift in your seat, feeling the stiffness of the chair against your back, and watch as a maid glides by, balancing a tray of sandwiches with the kind of practiced ease that only comes from serving people who expect to be served. Her face is expressionless, her eyes cast down, and you wonder if she ever sneaks a sandwich when no one's looking. Just a bite, a taste of what's supposedly so elegant. And then you notice something. The sandwiches, they're disappearing. Not because anyone is particularly hungry. Oh no, these people aren't here to eat. They're here to be seen, to perform the ritual. The sandwiches are props, really, little edible symbols of restraint, of not needing to eat much, of being so refined that even your appetite is delicate. You take another bite, the cucumber slipping slightly against the buttered bread, and it tastes, well, it tastes like nothing. Like a watery sigh. And yet, it's oddly satisfying in a way you can't quite explain. Maybe it's the crunch, or the coolness, or the strange, almost smug knowledge that you're part of something a little silly, a little strange, and yet utterly human. You lean back in your chair, the sun warm on your face, and let the sounds of the garden party wash over you. Clinking cups, polite laughter, the soft rustle of fabric. And for a moment you feel it too, that sense of quiet belonging, of being part of a world that's somehow both absurd and comforting at the same time. And as the breeze shifts, carrying with it the scent of roses and a hint of freshly baked scones, you wonder, what else could a cucumber sandwich possibly mean? You stretch your legs a little, shifting in your seat as the sun slips lower, casting long golden beams across the neatly clipped hedges. The air feels heavier now, almost syrupy, like it's thick with old secrets and the quiet hum of afternoon gossip. You can hear it, soft voices, punctuated by the gentle tap of a teaspoon against porcelain. Someone is laughing in that restrained, breathy way, the kind that says, "I'm far too elegant to really laugh." And you lean in just a little, because you've caught the scent of cucumber again, crisp and cold, as if it's whispering some secret just for you. You glance down at the table, where a lady's gloved hand hovers over a plate of sandwiches. The crusts are trimmed away so perfectly, it's almost surgical. Each sandwich a pale, neat rectangle of bread and cucumber, with not a crumb out of place. It's like holding a little piece of edible architecture. And you can't help but wonder, why the fuss? Why the ritual of slicing off the crusts, stacking them so neatly, and presenting them like they're the crown jewels of the tea table? Turns out, the Victorians were obsessed with appearances. Everything was a performance. Your clothes, your manners, even your sandwiches. Trimming the crusts wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about making a statement. A little crust was a symbol of, well, effortlessness. It said, "Look at me. I have the time, the servants, the flour, and the delicate little knives to make something this impractical." It was an edible whisper that you didn't need to worry about food for sustenance. Your life was about leisure, refinement, and an almost comical dedication to looking proper. You nibble another sandwich, and the bread melts against your tongue like a sigh. The cucumber is cool, almost wet, and you imagine it must have been quite the ordeal to grow them. The greenhouses, oh yes, the greenhouses. They were like little glass kingdoms of control, where nature was bent to the will of the wealthy. Heating a greenhouse in the chilly English climate wasn't cheap. And growing cucumbers year-round was a bit like lighting your money on fire just to watch it burn. But for the Victorians, it was a statement. We can make cucumbers grow even when nature says no. You nibble another sandwich, and the bread melts against your tongue like a sigh. The cucumber is cool, almost wet, and you imagine it must have been quite the ordeal to grow them. The greenhouses, oh yes, the greenhouses. They were like little glass kingdoms of control, where nature was bent to the will of the wealthy. Heating a greenhouse in the chilly English climate wasn't cheap, and growing cucumbers year-round was a bit like lighting your money on fire just to watch it burn. But for the Victorians, it was a statement. We can make cucumbers grow even when nature says no. And then there's the strange, forgotten truth that cucumbers were thought to be dangerous for some people. Really. Some Victorian doctors warned that cucumbers could cause wind in the stomach or make the blood too cold. Eating too many might, they claimed, lead to a kind of slippery moral decline. Too much luxury, too much softness. Imagine being scolded by your doctor for having an extra sandwich because it might give you a case of the vapors. You chuckle a little at that, picturing some poor soul swooning dramatically after their third cucumber sandwich, a fainting couch hastily summoned as the household staff fans them with a lace doily. You notice a man at a nearby table, his mustache waxed to perfection, whispering something about how cucumber sandwiches were the ideal food for an afternoon of refined conversation. You wonder what kind of conversation could possibly need a cucumber sandwich to hold it together. Perhaps they were discussing the latest scandal in the papers, a duke caught in an embarrassing predicament, or a lady whose dress was scandalously low cut at the opera. Or maybe it was just the weather. Honestly, the Victorians could have a lot of opinions about weather. But as you listen, something odd drifts into your mind. Did you know that in some circles, cucumber sandwiches were seen as a subtle way to exclude people? They were often served at garden parties, yes, but the unspoken rule was that only certain kinds of people were invited. If you were of the wrong sort, too new to money, too loud, too ordinary, you might never get a chance to nibble on one of these pale, soggy little sandwiches. They weren't just food, they were gatekeepers. If you didn't understand their appeal, you clearly weren't refined enough to belong.
Historians still argue over whether cucumber sandwiches were a genuine status symbol or just a curious footnote in the culinary history of tea. Some say they were simply an accident of trend, a harmless fad that spread like a ripple in a pond. Others insist they were part of a broader culture of exclusion, a subtle way to separate the haves from the have-nots. You can almost picture a dusty academic shaking their head, muttering over a stack of old tea menus, wondering how we ever let a vegetable get so tangled up in social games. And as the sunlight fades a little more, the breeze picking up with a whisper through the trees, you shift in your seat and notice that the sandwiches are starting to look tired. The bread is going a little limp at the edges. The cucumbers are sweating under the afternoon heat. But still they sit there, a quiet testament to a world that once believed a bland little sandwich could be a symbol of power, of belonging, of knowing exactly how thin a cucumber should be sliced. You lean back, the chair creaking beneath you, and take a long, slow breath. The garden party hums on, a symphony of small talk and careful nibbles, and somewhere a child's laughter drifts through the air, sweet and unexpected, like a reminder that not everything in life has to be so carefully curated.
You wonder, as your eyes half close, if anyone ever really liked cucumber sandwiches, or if they just ate them because it was the done thing. And in the soft, sleepy haze of the afternoon, you let the question linger, like the faint green scent of cucumbers on your fingertips.
The light has softened now, melting into that honeyed glow that makes everything look a little more magical, or maybe just a little more like a scene from an oil painting. You glance across the table at a woman in a gown the color of faded lilacs, her lace gloves resting gently on the edge of a plate. Her fingers hover over a cucumber sandwich as though it's a fragile artifact, and for a moment it feels like you're watching a carefully rehearsed performance. An entire cast of characters swirling around a single plate of cucumber slices, acting out a play where the dialogue is whispered and the stakes are, well, a little absurd. You shift in your seat and feel the breeze ruffle your hair, carrying with it the faintest scent of cucumber, mingled with the sharper tang of tea leaves and polished silver. You can almost hear the rustle of silk, the faint scrape of a chair being drawn back, the low, rhythmic clink of spoons against china cups. It's all so delicate, so proper, so much effort for something so simple. You glance down at your own sandwich again, the cucumber catching the light in a way that makes it seem, well, almost elegant if you squint hard enough. And then you remember the peculiar fact that for the Victorians, tea wasn't just about the tea, or even the sandwiches. It was theater. Tea time was a performance, and every element had a role to play. The cucumber sandwich, it wasn't just a snack, it was a prop. You listen as a lady in a high-collared dress leans in to whisper something scandalous about the neighbor's greenhouse. Apparently, they'd been caught growing cucumbers in, well, too small a hothouse, and the result, cucumbers that were, dare she say it, slightly curved. The horror! You can almost hear the collective gasp ripple through the gathering, a delicate shiver of disapproval. The Victorians were particular about their cucumbers, straight, uniform, and as symmetrical as a well-pressed cravat. Any deviation, any hint of unruly nature was a whisper of chaos. And we can't have that at a proper tea party, now can we? A clean, straightforward tone with very little vocal ornamentation. Warm timbre, rich and comforting, creating a sense of closeness and intimacy. Slight nasal resonance, a gentle nasal quality that adds character without sounding harsh. Slowly pacing, 100 to 120 words per minute. Deliberate, unhurried delivery. Each word is given space, fostering relaxation. Monotone rhythm. Consistent pitch and volume throughout, like a soft lullaby that soothes rather than excites. You take another bite, feeling the cucumber's coolness melt against the buttered bread, and it's underwhelming, if you're honest. A bit like eating a damp paper towel, but somehow with more social pressure. And yet, you can't deny there's a strange satisfaction in the ritual, the precise way the sandwiches are cut, the faint crunch that barely registers against the softness of the bread, the unspoken understanding that this is what elegance tastes like. You glance toward the hedge-lined path, where two gentlemen are deep in conversation, one gesturing with a teaspoon as if it's a conductor's baton. They're debating something, their voices low but intense, and you catch a fragment, something about the proper proportion of bread to cucumber. Imagine that people once argued about how much cucumber should go in a sandwich. You can almost picture the pamphlets, the letters to the editor, the heated debates in drawing rooms by flickering candlelight. And then there's the truly strange part. Some Victorians believed cucumber sandwiches weren't just a sign of refinement, they were good for your health. A cucumber was thought to have cooling properties, you see, which could counteract the supposed overheating effects of rich foods like meats and pastries. So while you might indulge in a hearty roast at dinner, you'd offset it with a few dainty cucumber sandwiches at tea, as if the vegetable could somehow neutralize your sins. A little edible redemption, served between slices of bread. Of course, there were whispers too. Old wives' tales about cucumbers causing melancholy or even madness. Some said eating too many could make your blood too thin or your thoughts too slippery. Others warned that cucumbers, being cold by nature, could unbalance the delicate humors of the body. You imagine a Victorian doctor, peering over his spectacles, solemnly advising a patient to limit their cucumber intake, lest they fall into a state of lethargic despair. And yet, here they all are, nibbling away at these sandwiches, like they're the very essence of sophistication. You can't help but smile at the thought. This quiet absurdity of it all. The way people convince themselves that this is the right way, the proper way, the only way to enjoy a slice of cucumber. You shift in your seat again, feeling the press of the chair's carved back against your spine, and notice a lady delicately dabbing at the corner of her mouth with a monogrammed napkin. Her expression is serene, almost regal, as if she's participating in a ceremony far older and more important than any of us will ever understand. And maybe that's the point, isn't it? It's not about the taste, it's about the performance, about knowing the steps of the dance, even if the music is silent and the stage is just a garden lawn in the soft light of a summer afternoon. A bee buzzes lazily past your ear, its wings a faint blur of motion, and you wonder how many generations of bees have drifted through garden parties like this, oblivious to the debates over crusts and cucumber slices. The breeze stirs again, a soft sigh through the leaves, and you let your eyes drift half closed, feeling the warmth of the sun and the coolness of the cucumber lingering on your tongue. And somewhere in the distance, the faint clink of teaspoons against china continues, like a metronome keeping time in a world where the sandwiches are small, the conversations are careful, and the cucumbers always and forever elegant. The afternoon air grows heavier, thick with the scent of damp grass, polished wood, and a faint trace of tobacco drifting lazily from a distant cigar. You glance toward the tea table again, your eyes lingering on the neat little stack of sandwiches, each one a quiet monument to Victorian propriety. The bread is so pale it's almost ghostly, and the cucumbers, well, they glisten faintly, like they're barely holding themselves together in the afternoon heat. A bead of moisture runs down the side of a slice, catching the light, and you find yourself thinking that the whole thing feels oddly fragile, like the sandwiches might dissolve into nothing if you looked at them too hard. You take another small bite, the crustless edges soft against your lips, and your teeth sink through the bread with almost no resistance. The cucumber inside offers the faintest crunch, a whisper of texture in an otherwise featureless bite. And as you chew, slowly, carefully, you remember something strange. The bread itself has a history too. Back then, white bread wasn't just a baking choice, it was a status symbol. You pause, letting the fact settle, and glance around at the guests in their starched collars and perfectly pinned hats. It turns out that in the Victorian era, white bread wasn't just preferred, it was prized. A sign that you could afford the finest, most refined flour, the kind that had been sifted and bleached until it was as pale as a porcelain teacup. Brown bread, with its coarser texture and flecks of bran, was for the lower classes, the workers, the laborers, the people who actually needed the energy from their food. White bread, on the other hand, was a quiet luxury, a way to say, I can afford to eat like a delicate little bird. So, when you think about it, a cucumber sandwich wasn't just a cucumber sandwich. It was a little edible flex, a sandwich that said, I don't need calories, I don't need fuel for hard labor. I just need a delicate snack to pass the time between conversations. And let's not forget, the bread had to be fresh. Stale bread was a disaster. Imagine the horror of biting into a cucumber sandwich and hearing the faint, ominous crackle of crust that had been left out too long. Scandalous. A clean, straightforward tone with very little vocal ornamentation. Warm timbre, rich and comforting, creating a sense of closeness and intimacy. Slight nasal resonance, a gentle nasal quality that adds character without sounding harsh. Slowly pacing, 100 to 120 words per minute. Deliberate, unhurried delivery. Each word is given space, fostering relaxation. Monotone rhythm, consistent pitch and volume throughout, like a soft lullaby that soothes rather than excites. You can almost hear the whispers. Did you hear what happened at Lady Weatherby's tea? The sandwiches were dry. A collective shudder, a sip of tea to soothe the nerves, a vow never to let such a social faux pas happen in your garden. And while the sandwiches seem like such a simple thing, there's another layer to it, literally. The butter. Oh yes, the butter. It had to be just the right amount, thinly spread, like a secret, barely there, but present enough to smooth the edges of the cucumber's watery crispness. Too much, and you were gauche, careless. Too little, and the sandwich fell apart, dry, crumbly, and a sign that perhaps your household wasn't quite as well managed as it should be. You look around, noticing how the guests hold their sandwiches with a kind of reverence, as if they're fragile glass sculptures. Pinkies lifted, elbows tucked close, bites small and precise. It's almost a ballet, isn't it? A performance of elegance, where every gesture is measured, every crumb accounted for. And yet, underneath it all, there's a quiet absurdity, a sense that they're all just playing a part. You take another slow bite, the cucumber barely leaving an impression on your tongue, and you wonder if anyone actually liked the taste of these sandwiches, or if they just ate them because they were supposed to. Some historians still argue about this, you know, whether cucumber sandwiches were genuinely beloved, or whether they were a kind of edible etiquette test, a way to prove that you knew the rules, that you belonged to the right kind of world. A lady in a feathered hat nearby leans in, her voice soft and conspiratorial, and she murmurs about how certain households would import their flour from abroad just to make the whitest bread possible. Imagine that! Ships crossing oceans, barrels of flour hauled through ports, all so someone could host a tea party with sandwiches that looked just so. You almost expect someone to whisper, "Remember that time they had to cancel the picnic because the flour shipment was delayed?" Terribly gauche. You can't help but smile at the thought. How a sandwich became a symbol of far-flung trade, of empire, of a world built on invisible connections. The cucumbers in the greenhouse, the flour from distant mills, the butter churned in some country estate, all coming together to make a bite that vanishes almost as soon as you taste it. And yet, there's something oddly comforting about it all. The routine, the ritual, the quiet absurdity of sitting in the afternoon light, nibbling on a sandwich that's more symbol than sustenance. The world beyond the garden hums with the clatter of industry, the rumble of trains, the sharp cries of street vendors. But here, in this little corner of controlled nature, everything is soft and slow and strangely still. A breeze stirs the leaves, the scent of roses wafting past your nose, and you lean back, feeling the warmth of the sun seep into your skin. Somewhere, a dog barks faintly, far off, and the clink of china continues, a quiet rhythm in a world where even the simplest snack is loaded with meaning. And as you close your eyes for a moment, the taste of cucumber still lingering, you can't help but think, maybe that's the point. The air feels cooler now. The sun dipping lower behind the trees, casting long fingers of shadow across the garden lawn. You shift slightly in your seat, feeling the creak of wicker beneath you, and watch as the last of the sandwiches are carried away. Small, precise stacks of crustless rectangles, vanishing like whispers in the evening light. A few crumbs linger on the tablecloth, pale specks against the crisp white linen, almost too insignificant to brush away. And yet, you can't help but think that if someone were to brush them away, they'd probably do it with the utmost care, a little flick of the wrist, as if even the act of clearing a crumb had to be elegant. You glance toward the far end of the garden, where a greenhouse stands like a glass cathedral, its panes catching the fading sunlight in warm, golden glints. And it hits you. This whole cucumber sandwich business didn't happen by accident. No, it was the result of a very particular kind of obsession, a greenhouse obsession. You wander closer, your shoes crunching softly on the gravel, and peer inside. Rows of cucumber plants stretch toward the ceiling, their leaves thick and dark, the fruits themselves hanging like smooth green pendulums, glistening faintly with moisture. The air inside is warm and damp, heavy with the scent of soil and growing things, and you can almost hear the faint crackle of the heating system, coal furnaces working quietly in the background, feeding warmth into this fragile world of glass and iron. You imagine the work that went into it all, shoveling coal, tending the fires, watering the plants, ensuring the humidity was just so. All of it so that when the time came for tea, there would be cucumbers, fresh, tender, and, most importantly, out of season. That was the real trick, wasn't it? Anyone could grow cucumbers in the summer, but it took a certain kind of wealth, a certain kind of determination to serve them when the frost lay thick on the ground and the trees were bare. You picture a gentleman in a top hat, standing proudly before his greenhouse, puffing on a cigar and gesturing grandly at the rows of cucumbers, as if to say, "Yes, I command nature itself." And you can't help but smirk a little at the thought. This quiet, absurd battle of status, fought not with swords, but with salad ingredients. And here's a curious fact that makes you pause. Did you know that some Victorians believed cucumbers had medicinal properties? Oh yes. They were thought to soothe inflammation, to cool the blood, and even to ease headaches. Imagine that, eating a cucumber sandwich and thinking, "Ah, yes, this will surely prevent my next bout of the vapors." Of course, some doctors warned that too much cucumber could make you sluggish, even melancholic. It was a fine line, apparently, between cooling your blood and cooling your spirit. Some historians still debate whether this obsession with greenhouses and cucumbers was entirely rational or just a symptom of Victorian eccentricity run amok. Was it really about the vegetable itself, or was it about what the vegetable represented? The ability to create abundance where none should exist. The power to control nature, to bend the seasons to your will, To pluck a cucumber from a vine in the middle of winter and say, "Look at me, look at what I can do." You step back from the greenhouse, the glass cool beneath your fingertips, and glance at the fading garden. The party is winding down now, voices lower, the laughter softer, the clink of spoons fading into the background. You see a lady in a pale pink dress plucking a final sandwich from a tray, holding it delicately between her gloved fingers, as if it were a rare, fragile treasure. She takes the tiniest of bites, lips barely parting, and you wonder if she's savoring the flavor or simply the performance. And as the evening settles in, a soft golden dusk wrapping the garden in gentle warmth, you feel a quiet understanding settle in your chest. The cucumber sandwich wasn't really about the sandwich at all. It was about the greenhouse, the servants who stoked the fires, the delicate paper-thin slices, the perfect crusts, the softest white bread. It was about showing the world that you could afford to waste time and effort on something so unnecessary. A soft breeze stirs the leaves, the faintest whisper of cool air against your cheek, and you close your eyes for a moment, letting the sounds of the garden wash over you, the fading chatter, the distant bark of a dog, the soft sigh of the wind through the hedges. You take a deep breath, the scent of grass and greenhouse earth filling your lungs, and you think, maybe it's not such a terrible thing to find beauty in the absurd. After all, isn't that what most of life is when you really think about it? A series of small, strange rituals, some of them elegant, some of them ridiculous, and all of them, in their own way, a little bit wonderful. The garden feels quieter now, the air settling into a soft hum, like the world is taking a slow, deep breath. You lean back in your chair, the woven wicker pressing gently into your shoulders, and watch as the guests begin to drift, moving in slow, deliberate patterns, like the leaves that flutter down from the oaks, twirling lazily toward the earth. The plates have mostly been cleared, save for a few lonely cucumber sandwiches sitting quietly, as if they've been left behind by accident, or maybe on purpose. You can't quite tell. You hear a soft voice to your right, two ladies in wide-brimmed hats, their parasols resting against the table, whispering in the kind of hush that begs to be overheard. One of them leans in and says, "Of course, cucumber sandwiches are the choice for any proper gathering. They're so genteel, aren't they?" The other nods, but there's a flicker of something in her eyes. Perhaps amusement, perhaps exhaustion, as if she too is quietly wondering why exactly everyone keeps pretending that a cucumber sandwich is somehow the pinnacle of refinement. You take another small bite, the bread almost dissolving against your tongue, the cucumber cool and slick. And then, drifting on the breeze, a memory surfaces, an odd little tidbit you heard somewhere. Did you know that Victorian ladies believed eating cucumber sandwiches was a way to show restraint? That's right. The thinner the slice of cucumber, the more refined the lady. Because, of course, a proper woman was supposed to eat delicately, gracefully, as if the mere act of nourishment was something to be approached with extreme caution. No heavy meats, no rich cheeses, just a whisper of cucumber, just enough to suggest you were eating, but never enough to seem, well, hungry. You can't help but smile at the absurdity of it. You can't help but smile at the absurdity of it. This idea that food wasn't really about sustenance, but about signaling. A cucumber sandwich wasn't just a sandwich. It was a performance of femininity, a way to say, "Look at me, so delicate, so elegant, so above the base needs of the body." And yet, somewhere deep inside, you wonder, weren't they all just starving? You shift slightly, the chair creaking beneath you, and let your gaze wander across the lawn. There's a group of gentlemen by the hedge, their conversation punctuated by soft laughter, and the occasional flick of a wrist as they gesture with teacups. They're discussing cravats, or perhaps cricket scores, or the merits of a new brand of hunting rifle. You can't quite tell, but it hardly matters. What does catch your ear is the faint, almost whispered observation from one of the men. The cucumber sandwich, you know, is really the perfect thing for a lady's luncheon. Light, refined, and won't ruin the figure. Ah, there it is. You feel a little shiver of recognition, how the cucumber sandwich became tangled up in ideas of beauty, of slenderness, of delicacy. It wasn't just about being refined. It was about appearing effortless, about being able to say, "Look at me, so elegant, so composed, so small." Some historians still debate whether this obsession with dainty eating was an accident of culture or a deliberate design, a way to keep women contained, controlled, their appetites as tightly laced as their corsets. There are whispers in the books, you know, about how cucumber sandwiches became a kind of edible corset, something that looked like food, but left you just a little hungry, a little lightheaded, a little easier to manage. You glance down at your own hands, resting lightly on the table, and imagine what it must have felt like to live like that. To nibble on a sandwich so thin it was practically see-through. To measure your bites with the precision of a jeweler inspecting a diamond. To smile politely while your stomach grumbled quietly beneath your corset. And you wonder, how many of these garden parties ended with guests sneaking into the kitchen hunting for something more substantial to eat once the performance was over? A breeze stirs the air again, lifting a few stray petals from a nearby rosebush, and sending them drifting across the lawn. You watch them tumble, light as feathers, and think of the women at the table, how they held their sandwiches between gloved fingers, careful not to let the butter smear, how they tilted their heads just so, their laughter tinkling like wind chimes, their hunger tucked away behind smiles. And you can't help but feel a strange, quiet sympathy for them. For all their elegance, for all their refined gestures, there must have been moments, small, fleeting moments, when they looked down at that plate of sandwiches and thought, "Is this really all there is?" You breathe in deeply, the scent of grass and cooling tea drifting over you. And as the sunlight fades a little more, you feel the weight of the day settle into your bones. The cucumber sandwiches sit, quiet and untouched, like delicate little ghosts of a meal that was never really about eating in the first place. And as the sky deepens into soft blues and purples, you wonder, if you had lived back then, would you have loved the cucumber sandwich? Or would you too have smiled politely, taken the smallest of bites, and dreamed of something heartier, like a warm buttered scone, or a thick slice of fruit cake, something that actually felt like food? But for now, you let the question linger, soft and unresolved, as the sounds of the garden party fade into a gentle hush. The sky has darkened to a dusky violet now, and a faint, lazy chill settles over the garden. You rub your hands together absently, feeling the cool air brush your skin, and glance at the table one last time. The cucumber sandwiches are fewer now, the plates looking a little sparse, a few stray crumbs clinging to the lace doilies. There's a certain stillness in the air, as if the garden itself is holding its breath, waiting for the next act of this strange little performance. You listen as a few lingering guests chat softly, their voices low and measured, the words blending together like the distant hum of a beehive. One gentleman mentions, almost in passing, that cucumber sandwiches are the perfect food for polite company. Another, with a wry smile, adds that they're refreshing, like a cool breeze on the tongue. And you can't help but smile at that, because, honestly, a cucumber sandwich is barely a breeze. It's more like the faintest whisper of flavor, a ghost of something green and damp, slipping past your taste buds almost before you realize it's there. And yet, there's something strangely appealing about it. The way the sandwich is so delicate, so unthreatening, so perfectly inoffensive. It's the snack equivalent of small talk, isn't it? A cucumber sandwich won't challenge you. It won't leave you too full or too excited. It's there to keep you just comfortable enough, polite, composed, slightly hungry. You glance at a young lady seated nearby, her gloved fingers holding a sandwich with such precision you'd think it was a priceless artifact. She takes a small, measured bite, her lips barely parting, and you wonder if she's actually enjoying it, or if she's just doing what's expected of her. Her eyes drift toward the sky, where a few early stars are beginning to blink into view, and for a moment you catch a flicker of something in her gaze. Boredom? Resignation? Or perhaps just a quiet hunger for something more. A clean, straightforward tone with very little vocal ornamentation. Warm timbre, rich and comforting, creating a sense of closeness and intimacy. Slight nasal resonance, a gentle nasal quality that adds character without sounding harsh. Slowly pacing, 100 to 120 words per minute. Deliberate, unhurried delivery. Each word is given space, fostering relaxation. Monotone rhythm, consistent pitch and volume throughout, like a soft lullaby that soothes rather than excites. And then you remember the odd little fact you'd nearly forgotten. Cucumber sandwiches weren't always the pinnacle of elegance. In fact, before they became the darling of the Victorian tea table, cucumbers were once considered common, even a little suspicious. Some people thought they were too watery, too bland, too likely to cause indigestion. There were rumors, whispered warnings, that eating too many could make you ill. It's funny, isn't it, how something so ordinary can be transformed into a symbol of refinement, simply because the right people decided it was fashionable. One day, cucumbers were just cucumbers, cool, crisp, and a little dull. And then, suddenly, they were the height of sophistication. It makes you wonder what foods today might seem completely ridiculous in a few decades' time. Will people look back at our avocado toast or oat milk lattes and think, really? That was considered elegant? Some historians still argue about the whole thing, whether the cucumber sandwich was ever really a symbol of status, or whether it just happened to fit neatly into a culture obsessed with appearances. They write long, careful papers, parsing the details of garden parties and recipe books, trying to pin down exactly when a cucumber stopped being a vegetable and became a social statement. But you suspect the truth is simpler than that. People love to create little rituals, little symbols of who they are and where they belong. And in the Victorian world, the cucumber sandwich was just convenient. Easy to make, easy to eat, easy to serve on a tray with a pot of tea and a few sprigs of parsley for garnish. You lean back in your chair, the fabric soft against your skin, and let your gaze drift over the darkening garden. A few candles flicker to life on the tables, casting small halos of golden light that dance gently in the breeze. The guests begin to stand, brushing imaginary crumbs from their skirts, adjusting their cuffs, and murmuring polite farewells. And you, sitting quietly in the corner, feel the weight of it all, the strange, delicate performance of it. The sandwiches, the tea, the small, careful conversations about weather and wallpaper and the Queen's latest portrait. It's all so light, so airy, so carefully arranged to seem effortless, when in truth every detail has been measured, rehearsed, and curated within an inch of its life. You take one last bite of the sandwich, the cucumber cool and slippery against your tongue, and it tastes like a sigh, like a pause, like the quiet between sentences. And for a moment, you let yourself drift in that pause, feeling the faint pulse of the evening settle into your bones. The wind stirs again, soft and cool, and you wonder, if the cucumber sandwich was a symbol, then what exactly was it a symbol for? Restraint? Status? Boredom? Or just the human need to make meaning out of the smallest, most ordinary things? You let the thought linger as the stars shimmer a little brighter in the velvet sky, and the last crumbs of the sandwiches are swept away by the breeze. The evening deepens, and the garden hums with a kind of soft, fading energy, like the last sigh of a song as it drifts into silence. The guests have thinned out, their footsteps crunching faintly on the gravel as they make their way toward the gates, their goodbyes trailing behind them like ribbons in the breeze. A few linger in quiet clusters, their voices low, their laughter softer now, more like the gentle rustle of leaves than the bright peal of afternoon chatter. You stay seated, feeling the warmth of the day slowly seep away from your skin, replaced by a light chill that settles along the back of your neck. The table in front of you is nearly bare now, just a few teacups half full, a crumpled napkin, and a single cucumber sandwich sitting quietly, as if waiting for someone to claim it. You reach for it almost without thinking, the bread cool and yielding beneath your fingers, the cucumber slice peeking out like a pale green secret. And as you bring it to your mouth, you pause, because suddenly you remember something strange. Did you know that cucumber sandwiches were once considered almost medicinal? That's right. In the world of Victorian remedies, cucumbers were thought to have cooling properties, perfect for calming fevers, soothing sunburns, and even, some claimed, restoring a delicate complexion. There were whispers that the cucumber could balance the body's hot humors, whatever those were, and nibbling on a cucumber sandwich was, in a way, like eating a little slice of health. You take a slow bite, the cucumber crisp, the butter soft, and you wonder if anyone ever really believed that, or if perhaps they simply liked the idea of it, of food as more than nourishment, of food as medicine, as fashion, as conversation. You imagine a lady at a tea table, tilting her head just so, and murmuring, "Oh yes, cucumber sandwiches, so very good for the complexion, you know," and everyone around her nodding, as if that settled the matter entirely. It's funny, isn't it, how people build entire worlds out of the tiniest things. A cucumber sandwich, after all, is just bread, butter, and cucumber. But in the hands of the Victorians, it became a symbol of elegance, a marker of status, and, somehow, a tiny edible remedy for the imagined ailments of genteel society. Some historians still debate whether this belief in cucumbers' medicinal properties was widespread, or just another charming quirk of a few eccentric tea-goers. They combed through letters and recipe books, hunting for clues, trying to trace the exact moment when a vegetable became a cure. And as you sit there, nibbling on your sandwich in the fading light, you wonder, did anyone actually feel better after eating one? Or did they just believe they did? And wasn't that belief enough to make it true, in a way? You glance across the garden, where a few servants are clearing plates and folding up linen, their movements practiced and precise. A young boy in a cap scurries past, carrying a tray of empty cups, his footsteps quick and light. And in the distance, a faint tune drifts from a nearby parlor, soft notes of a piano, a waltz perhaps, slow and lilting, like the gentle sway of the trees in the evening breeze. You close your eyes for a moment, the taste of cucumber lingering on your tongue like a faint, watery echo. And you imagine the generations of people who sat just like this, on garden lawns, in drawing rooms, at tea tables, nibbling at the edges of a sandwich that was never really about hunger. It was about belonging, about appearing refined, about participating in a ritual that made everyone, at least for a moment, a little more polished, a little more perfect, a little more in control. And yet, you can't help but wonder, did anyone ever sneak away from the table and dream of something more satisfying? A hot pie, perhaps, or a plate of hearty stew. Something that filled the belly, not just the imagination. But for now, you let the thought drift away, soft and slow, as the last of the light fades from the sky and the garden settles into a quiet hum of distant footsteps, fading music, and the faint green ghost of cucumber. The stars are out now, faint pinpricks of light, shimmering softly in the velvet sky. The garden, once a stage bustling with careful movements and whispered conversations, has fallen into a quiet lull. The tables are mostly bare, save for a few stray teacups and a forgotten fan resting on the edge of a chair. A gentle breeze stirs the leaves, rustling through the hedges with a sound like distant applause fading into the night. You let out a soft sigh, feeling the cool air settle against your skin, and watch as a maid in a crisp apron clears the last of the plates, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. The cucumber sandwiches are gone now, swept away like a dream you barely remember upon waking. All that's left is the faint scent of butter and bread, and the quiet, lingering memory of their soft, almost imperceptible crunch. You lean back, your head tilting toward the sky, and you remember another curious fact, one that makes you smile in the dark. Did you know that some Victorians believed cucumber sandwiches were best eaten without conversation? That's right. The idea was that the sandwiches were so delicate, so refined, that to speak while eating them would somehow break the spell. Imagine that, a room full of people, all nibbling quietly at their sandwiches, careful not to speak until the last bite had disappeared. It's a little absurd, isn't it? And yet, in a way, it makes sense. The cucumber sandwich wasn't just a food. It was a moment of pause, a tiny, edible symbol of self-control, restraint, and the quiet, practiced art of not saying too much. You glance around, half expecting to see a guest still seated at a table, holding a sandwich with reverence, eyes cast down as if in silent communion with the cucumber itself. But the garden is empty now, save for the soft glow of a lantern hanging from a tree, its light swaying gently with the breeze. And as you sit there, the quiet settling deeper around you, you wonder if anyone ever felt free at these garden parties, free to laugh too loudly, to eat with gusto, to let a crumb fall onto their lap without a twinge of guilt. Or were they all, every guest, every host, every hovering servant, trapped in a dance of appearances, where even a sandwich had to be eaten with careful precision, where every bite was a small, silent performance? Some historians still argue about this, whether Victorian tea parties were truly moments of joy, or if they were simply a gilded cage, a way for society to police itself with rules so subtle and so intricate that even a cucumber sandwich could become a measure of your worth. You feel a small smile tug at the corner of your mouth as you think about it. The cucumber, so cool, so pale, so neutral. It's not a fruit that demands attention like a strawberry, not a rich indulgence like chocolate. It's just there, a quiet, watery crunch in a world that prized softness, gentility, and restraint. And yet, the cucumber sandwich endured. It became a symbol of refinement, not because of its boldness, but because of its very lack of it. It was the absence of flavor, the absence of hunger, the absence of chaos that made it perfect for a world that valued appearances above all else. You close your eyes, the night air soft against your face, and the sounds of the garden, so gentle now, so faint, seem to fade even further. The rustle of leaves, the creak of wicker, the distant echo of footsteps, they all melt into a kind of hush, a stillness that feels like the end of a long, slow sigh. And as the stars shimmer quietly above, You think about the cucumber sandwich, its thin slices layered with care, its crusts trimmed away with precision, and you wonder, did it ever really matter? Or was it just an excuse to gather, to talk, to perform the delicate dance of being human in a world that sometimes feels too big, too loud, too much? You let the question drift, like the faintest scent of cucumber on the breeze, and feel yourself sinking slowly into the soft embrace of the night. The garden lies quiet now, wrapped in the hush of twilight, as if the very air has decided to settle into a gentle slumber. The last of the guests have departed, their laughter and chatter fading like echoes into the night, and you find yourself alone amid the soft rustle of leaves and the distant, steady tick of a clock inside the house. The tablecloths have been cleared, the lanterns extinguished one by one, and the faint scent of tea and cucumber lingers in the air, a quiet ghost of the afternoon's performance. You stretch your legs, feeling the faint stiffness in your knees, and glance toward the greenhouse, its glass panes catching the last hints of moonlight. There's something almost magical about it in the dark, this quiet temple of controlled nature, where cucumbers, of all things, were grown with the precision and care usually reserved for rare orchids or prize roses. And yet, there they were, rows upon rows of green, watery fruit, tended with meticulous attention, all so they could be sliced thin enough to lay between two pieces of bread and impress a crowd. It's a strange sort of elegance, isn't it? Growing something so plain, so simple, and transforming it into a symbol of sophistication. And as you think about it, you remember another curious tidbit. The Victorians weren't just growing cucumbers for sandwiches, they were growing them as conversation starters. That's right. In a world where small talk was an art form, a greenhouse full of cucumbers gave you something to boast about. Oh, you're still growing yours outdoors. How quaint. We've had ours ready since March, thanks to the new steam-powered heating system. You smile at the thought, imagining gentlemen in waistcoats comparing cucumber yields like modern tech enthusiasts comparing the latest gadgets. It's oddly familiar, isn't it? The need to have something, anything, to talk about that says, "Look at me, I'm doing well." And yet, some historians still puzzle over why it was the cucumber, of all things, that became such a prized guest at the tea table. It wasn't particularly nutritious. It wasn't rare, at least in the summer months. It wasn't even that flavorful. But perhaps that was the point. The cucumber was a blank canvas, subtle, clean, understated. It was the perfect food for a society that prized appearances, that believed true elegance lay in not trying too hard, in making effort seem effortless. You picture the sandwiches again, those neat little rectangles of white bread, crusts trimmed, slices so thin you could almost see through them. And you wonder how many people sat at tables like this, nibbling at them, while secretly longing for something more. A rich, savory pie, perhaps, or a thick slice of bread and cheese, something that filled the belly, not just the plate. The breeze stirs again, rustling the hedges, and you let your eyes drift half-closed, the cool night air brushing gently against your cheeks. Somewhere, an owl calls softly, its sound low and distant, like a question you can't quite make out. You shift, feeling the coolness of the night settle into your bones, and you wonder, was it ever really about the sandwiches at all? Or was it about the ritual, the chance to gather, to perform, to sit among friends and strangers alike, and pretend, for a little while, that the world was orderly, that nature could be tamed, that even something as small as a cucumber could be controlled, shaped, and served just so. You take a slow, deep breath, the scent of damp earth and faintly lingering cucumber filling your lungs, and you let yourself sink into the quiet. The night is soft around you, the darkness gentle and forgiving, and the memory of the sandwiches, those delicate, watery bites of nothing, seems to melt into the stillness, like a thought half remembered, like a dream fading just as you try to grasp it. And as the last flicker of candlelight fades from the windows of the house, you let yourself drift, just a little, into the space between one breath and the next, where the cucumber sandwiches linger, cool, crisp, and entirely absurd. The night has deepened now, a soft blanket of darkness, wrapping the garden in quiet shadows. You shift in your chair, feeling the stiffness in your shoulders ease as the last murmurs of the party fade into silence. There's a stillness here, an almost sacred hush that settles over the lawn like dew. The air smells faintly of damp earth, cooling tea, and the ghostly trace of cucumber, so faint it's more memory than scent now. Your gaze drifts toward the greenhouse once again, its glass panes gleaming faintly in the moonlight. It's empty now, but you can almost imagine the faint creak of the glass expanding in the warmth of the day, the soft whisper of leaves brushing against one another as cucumbers grow in orderly rows, tended with care by unseen hands. And you remember something odd. Did you know the Victorians sometimes grew cucumbers in glass tubes? Yes, really. They'd carefully slip young cucumbers into straight, narrow glass sleeves to ensure they grew perfectly straight, because of course a bent cucumber was simply unthinkable on a proper tea table. You can't help but chuckle softly at the thought of it, gardeners hovering over their plants like nervous parents, coaxing cucumbers into rigid perfection, all for the sake of a sandwich that barely tasted of anything at all. Some historians still debate whether this was an act of pure aesthetic obsession or a symptom of the wider Victorian need for control over nature, over society, over the tiniest details of daily life. You stretch your legs out a little, feeling the cool grass brush against your shoes, and imagine the quiet satisfaction someone must have felt upon slicing into a cucumber and finding it perfectly uniform, each slice a flawless coin of pale green, whisper thin, ready to be layered onto buttered bread and served to guests who would, of course, nibble politely and say very little. It makes you think about how much effort went into creating that illusion of ease. The greenhouses, the glass tubes, the careful tending of plants, the trimming of crusts, the precise arrangement of sandwiches on silver trays. All of it for a moment, a fleeting, delicate bite that was more performance than pleasure. And you wonder, how many of those guests ever paused to appreciate the sheer absurdity of it all? Did they ever think, as you are now, that the entire ritual was just a little silly? You glance up at the sky, where the stars shimmer faintly, like distant crumbs of light scattered across a dark tablecloth. And you think about the people who once sat beneath these same stars, nibbling their cucumber sandwiches and making quiet conversation about the weather, the Queen's portrait, the latest scandal in the papers. They would have worn gloves, of course, and hats tilted at just the right angle. They would have spoken softly, nodded politely, and dabbed at the corners of their mouths with embroidered napkins. And all the while, the cucumber sandwich, silent, inoffensive, delicate, sat quietly on the plate, a small, strange symbol of a world that prized form over flavor, ritual over need. You take a deep breath, the air cool and still against your skin, and you feel a quiet kind of understanding settle in your chest. The cucumber sandwich wasn't really about taste at all. It was about belonging, about playing your part in a carefully choreographed dance of manners and appearances, about showing the world that you were refined enough to appreciate something so bland, so restrained, so utterly unnecessary. And maybe there's a kind of beauty in that, in the way humans create meaning out of the smallest things: a slice of cucumber, a folded napkin, a quiet afternoon in a garden. It's a reminder that sometimes the most ordinary things can carry the weight of 1,000 unspoken rules, of centuries of habit, of a culture quietly telling you, this is who you are, this is how you belong. The breeze stirs again, rustling the leaves above you, and you close your eyes for a moment, letting the sounds of the night wrap around you. The faint creak of the greenhouse in the distance, the soft whisper of grass beneath your shoes, the far-off call of a night bird, And somewhere in the darkness, the ghost of a cucumber sandwich lingers, cool and crisp and a little absurd, just as it always was. The night settles deeper now, folding itself around you like a soft, worn blanket. The garden lies in a hush, the edges of the hedges blurring into the dark, the lanterns extinguished one by one, until only the moon casts its pale glow across the lawn. You lean back, your body sinking into the chair, as if the very air has thickened, growing heavier, slower. It's the kind of quiet that feels timeless, like the world has stopped for a moment just to breathe. And as you sit there, you find your mind wandering, slipping into odd corners, turning over strange little facts like smooth stones in your palm. One in particular comes to mind, and it makes you smile in the dark. The Victorians didn't just use cucumber sandwiches for tea parties. Oh no! They used them as props for an entire performance of refinement. A lady's tea table wasn't complete without a plate of them, of course. But there were also rules, unspoken, delicate rules, about how they should be served. For instance, did you know that cucumber sandwiches were always supposed to be cut into perfect rectangles, or, if you were feeling particularly daring, triangles? No messy, uneven slices here. Each piece had to be uniform, as if a ruler had been held against the bread. And the butter, the butter. It had to be just so. Not too thick, not too thin. Spread in an even layer so that it acted almost like an invisible glue, holding the cucumber in place without overpowering it. You can't help but picture the poor kitchen maid, standing in a dimly lit scullery, painstakingly buttering slice after slice of bread, with a knife so delicate it might as well have been a paintbrush. A soft sigh here, a muttered curse there, as she tried to make each sandwich as perfect as the one before. And all for a party where the sandwiches would be eaten in 3 dainty bites, gone before anyone even noticed the effort. You think about the guests at those tea parties, holding their sandwiches with gloved fingers, taking tiny, precise nibbles, and murmuring politely about the weather. You imagine a gentleman, perhaps, attempting to make conversation, saying something like, "Ah, yes, the cucumber sandwiches today are quite crisp, don't you think?" And everyone else nodding sagely, as if that were the most profound observation of the afternoon. Some historians still argue over how much of this was real and how much was exaggerated. Whether the Victorians truly believed in the elegance of the cucumber sandwich, or if it was simply a social habit, a kind of edible wallpaper for the background of their gatherings. You picture them, these scholars, sitting in dusty libraries, poring over old recipe books and etiquette manuals, trying to untangle the truth from the myth. And you wonder, Does it really matter? The cucumber sandwich, in the end, wasn't about taste. It was about a feeling. The quiet clink of china, the soft murmur of conversation, the rustle of linen napkins in hands that were always careful, always controlled. It was about creating a world where even something as small as a sandwich could say, "Look at me, I am refined, I know the rules." You shift a little in your seat, feeling the cool night air settle against your skin, and you think about the rituals we still have today. The things we do not because we need to, but because they make us feel like we belong. The coffee shop orders, the birthday cakes, the way we gather around a table and pass dishes, each bite a quiet reminder that we're part of something, even if that something is a little absurd. A breeze drifts past, lifting a few stray leaves and sending them skittering across the grass. The night hums softly around you. The faint creak of the garden gate, the low rustle of the hedge, the distant bark of a dog, and the faintest, most fleeting trace of cucumber in the air, like a memory that refuses to fully fade. And as you sit there, the quiet pressing in, you feel it, that odd, gentle sense that perhaps the cucumber sandwich wasn't a joke, after all. It was a ritual, a performance, a small, silly act of grace in a world that could be hard and loud and overwhelming. A cucumber sandwich, after all, is a kind of whisper, a moment of pause, a reminder that sometimes it's the quietest things that carry the most meaning. The night has softened now into a deep, velvety stillness, where the world feels like it's holding its breath, waiting for the next quiet thought to slip into the air. You let your head tilt back, gazing up at the stars, tiny pinpricks of light scattered across the dark canvas above you. The moon hangs low, a pale sliver, casting just enough light to outline the hedges and the faint shapes of forgotten plates on the table. And as the night hums around you, you remember another odd, almost comical fact about these cucumber sandwiches that once held such sway over the Victorian imagination. They weren't always the safe, refined choice. In fact, there were moments, whispers really, when cucumber sandwiches became controversial. You shift slightly, your curiosity piqued, and imagine a tea party scene not unlike the one you just witnessed. The sandwiches are laid out, pristine and pale, the guests murmuring in their delicate, restrained voices. And then someone, perhaps a bold hostess, perhaps an overzealous cook, serves a cucumber sandwich with a dash of mustard, or worse, a sprinkle of cress. You can almost hear the collective intake of breath, the subtle widening of eyes, the sharp, quiet pause in the conversation as the room absorbs the scandal. Mustard in a cucumber sandwich? What next? Spicy chutney? Horseradish? The very idea of it would have been enough to set the monocles trembling. You let a soft smile tug at the corners of your mouth. It's so very human, isn't it? The way we take something simple, a sandwich, a vegetable, and layer it with rules, with meaning, with unspoken expectations. The cucumber sandwich wasn't just a snack. It was a code, a way of saying, I know the rules, I belong here. And any deviation, however small, was like dropping a stone into a still pond, the ripples spreading out in subtle, silent judgment. Some historians still debate whether these so-called scandals were real moments of culinary rebellion, or whether they were just exaggerated by a few sharp-tongued gossips with nothing better to do. Perhaps the truth is somewhere in between. After all, it's easy to imagine a society so tightly wound that even a hint of mustard could feel like a minor revolution. You glance down at your hands resting lightly in your lap and wonder how many other rituals, quiet, absurd, and oddly comforting, have woven their way through history, only to fade like the taste of cucumber on the tongue. And yet, for all its delicacy, there was something oddly resilient about the cucumber sandwich. It endured. It became the standard, the reliable choice, the thing you could serve without offending anyone, as long as you followed the rules. No crusts, no heavy spreads, no daring flavors. Just the quiet, cool simplicity of cucumber, butter, and bread. You close your eyes for a moment, breathing in the cool night air, the faint scent of earth and grass, and the lingering memory of afternoon tea. And you think about how much effort we humans pour into things that, in the end, are just sandwiches. And how sometimes it's not about the sandwich at all. It's about the feeling, the ritual, the quiet understanding that, for a little while, we're all playing the same game, following the same rules, sitting at the same table. The wind stirs again, lifting a few stray leaves and sending them skittering across the grass, and you let your mind drift with them, soft, slow, and almost weightless. You think of the women and men who once sat in gardens like this, long ago, nibbling at sandwiches so thin they barely counted as food, laughing quietly at jokes that weren't all that funny, and feeling perhaps a little proud that they knew how to hold a sandwich just so, how to fold a napkin just right, how to belong. And as the night hums softly around you, the cucumber sandwich becomes something more than a snack. It's a symbol, a little slice of history wrapped up in bread and butter and quiet, restrained absurdity. The night is deep now, a blanket of stillness draped over the garden, softening the edges of the world into shadow and hush. You can feel the weight of it, this gentle quiet, like a sigh that settled into the grass, the hedges, the empty chairs. Even the air feels thicker, slower, cool against your skin, carrying the faintest, almost imperceptible hint of cucumber, as if the day's events have left behind a trace, a ghost of green and water. You sit back, letting the quiet hum around you, and you think of the sandwiches once more, those pale, delicate little rectangles, arranged so precisely on the tea table. And you remember another curious thing, something that almost makes you laugh. The Victorians didn't just eat cucumber sandwiches. They talked about them. They debated them. They even wrote about them, as if a thin slice of cucumber on buttered bread could hold the weight of an entire cultural moment. There were essays, you know, long meandering reflections on the virtues of the cucumber sandwich. Columns in society papers discussing whether it was acceptable to add a sprinkle of salt, or whether that would tip the balance too far into vulgarity. Polite letters exchanged between ladies debating the optimal thickness of the cucumber slice. Thin enough to see through, surely, but not so thin as to become insubstantial. It's funny, isn't it? The way we humans can turn the simplest things into subjects of endless fascination. Some historians still shake their heads over this, wondering how on earth a vegetable sandwich became the it girl of the Victorian tea table. Was it the symbolism of restraint, the delicate construction, or was it simply the fact that, in a world obsessed with rules and refinement, a cucumber sandwich was safe, so bland, so inoffensive, that no one could object? You imagine a group of ladies sitting in a sunlit drawing room, the air heavy with the scent of tea and roses, discussing the merits of different cucumbers, as if they were precious gems. One might say, "Oh, I do prefer the thinner-skinned cucumbers from the south, don't you?" And another, with a slight knowing nod, might add, "But of course, only if they're grown in proper glass houses. None of those rough country garden cucumbers." And as you picture it, you can't help but smile at the absurdity of it all. Because beneath the delicate crustlessness, the perfect slices, the whispered debates about butter and salt, the cucumber sandwich was never really about the cucumber. It was about belonging, about knowing the rules, playing the part, holding the sandwich between your fingers just so, and taking a bite that was just small enough to say, "I understand. I'm part of this." You shift a little in your seat, feeling the coolness of the evening settle into your bones. And let the thought sink in, how many times have we all done the same? Picked up a cup of coffee, a glass of wine, a fork at a dinner party, held it just the right way, smiled at just the right moment, nodded in agreement at something we barely cared about, all to say, "I belong here." A soft breeze stirs the hedges, and you hear the faint rustle of leaves, the distant rhythmic creak of a gate swinging gently on its hinges. The world feels smaller now, more intimate, as if it's folded itself in around you, a little cocoon of night and memory and quiet. And the cucumber sandwich, It drifts in your mind like a wisp of steam, cool and crisp and absurdly elegant, a small, strange reminder of all the ways we try, sometimes desperately, to make meaning out of the simplest things. You take a slow breath, the air filling your lungs with the scent of earth and fading grass, and you let the thought linger, soft and light, as the stars shimmer quietly overhead and the world settles deeper into the gentle hush of night. The night is thick and soft around you now, wrapping you in a quiet so complete it feels like the world has folded in on itself, tucking you into its gentle embrace. The air is cooler, a whisper of dampness clinging to the leaves, and the garden hums with a faint, sleepy rhythm. The distant hoot of an owl, the occasional creak of a branch swaying in the breeze, the soft rustle of something small moving through the grass. You let your eyes drift half closed, the weight of the day settling into your limbs, and you think once more of the cucumber sandwich, how it lingered at the center of 1,000 quiet moments, a silent guest at countless tea tables, its cool, watery crunch a kind of edible punctuation mark in the slow, deliberate conversations of the Victorian afternoon. And you remember another strange little detail, one that makes you smile just a bit in the darkness. Some Victorians believed that serving cucumber sandwiches at a gathering was a sign that the host possessed not just refinement, but also a certain temperament. That is, a willingness to embrace simplicity over ostentation, to provide a meal that was delicate, understated, and, let's be honest here, a little bit boring. It was a quiet rebellion, in a way. A cucumber sandwich said, "I don't need to impress you with elaborate dishes. I don't need to fill you up with heavy food. I offer you this, light, crisp, and cool, a moment of quiet in a noisy world." And somehow that restraint became elegant. You imagine a tea table set beneath a canopy of wisteria, the air heavy with the scent of blossoms, a silver tray of cucumber sandwiches resting in the center like a crown jewel. A lady reaches for one, her fingers pale against the white linen. And for a moment, just a moment, you can almost hear the silent agreement among the guests. Yes, this is how it should be. Simple, refined, a little bland, perhaps, but in a way that feels safe. It was a quiet rebellion, in a way. A cucumber sandwich said, "I don't need to impress you with elaborate dishes. I don't need to fill you up with heavy food. I offer you this, light, crisp, and cool, a moment of quiet in a noisy world." And somehow that restraint became elegant. But, of course, not everyone agreed. Some historians still argue that cucumber sandwiches were too bland, a culinary cop-out, a way for hosts to serve something that looked proper but required minimal effort. They point to cookbooks of the era, where recipes for more elaborate dishes, roasted meats, layered cakes, spiced puddings, stood in stark contrast to the humble cucumber sandwich, quietly occupying its little corner of the page, like a shy guest at a grand ball. And yet, despite the debates, the cucumber sandwich held its ground. It became a kind of social contract, an unspoken promise that you could gather, talk, and sip tea without the meal itself demanding too much attention. It was there to support the conversation, not to steal the spotlight. You shift slightly, the chair creaking softly beneath you, and you wonder how many people, over the years, sat just like you are now, alone in the quiet after a party, the crumbs swept away, the candles snuffed out, the faint scent of cucumber lingering in the air, like the last line of a poem. Did they, too, wonder why we fuss so much over such small things? Did they smile at the absurdity of it, the way you are now? You breathe in deeply, the night air cool and damp, and you think about the layers of meaning we build around the simplest rituals. The way a sandwich can become a symbol, a performance, a quiet nod to belonging. The cucumber, crisp and cold. The bread, soft and pale. The butter, barely there, holding it all together with a whisper of richness. And as the stars shimmer faintly above, you feel the weight of it, not just the sandwich itself, but the stories, the rules, the quiet, careful lives that built this strange little tradition. It's just a sandwich, after all, just cucumber and bread, and yet it's so much more. You let that thought linger, soft and slow, as the night hums around you, and the cucumber sandwich, that small, pale thing, rests gently in your mind, an echo of elegance, a slice of quiet, a cool, crisp moment in the long, winding story of being human. The night is thick now, full and still, the darkness settling over the garden like a soft, cool blanket. You can feel it in your bones, that gentle hum of the world exhaling after the last cup has been set down, the last guest has slipped away, and the quiet has returned to claim its place. The lanterns have long since been snuffed out, leaving only the faint shimmer of starlight glinting on dewdrops clinging to the edges of leaves and blades of grass. And as you sit there, half wrapped in the hush, you find yourself thinking once more about those sandwiches, those pale, almost weightless things that once seemed to hold so much meaning. It's funny, really, how much effort went into something so small. The greenhouse built just for the cucumbers. The gardener who tended them with a kind of quiet, obsessive pride, checking the temperature, wiping condensation from the glass, whispering over the plants as if they could hear. The cook, standing in the still, dim kitchen, slicing each cucumber into paper-thin rounds so uniform they might as well have been cut by a machine. And the host or hostess, arranging the sandwiches just so on a silver tray, ready to present them to a room full of people who might not even notice, or perhaps would pretend not to notice, because noticing too much would break the spell. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much of life is spent performing these quiet little rituals, building small moments of elegance, not because they're necessary, but because they give us the feeling that we are a little more than just creatures who eat and sleep, that we are people who choose to eat cucumber sandwiches in the afternoon light, not because we're hungry, but because we're part of a story, a tradition, a scene set just so. And yet, not everyone was convinced by the charms of the cucumber sandwich. You recall reading about how, as the Victorian era gave way to the bustling, grittier world of the Edwardians, there were voices, soft at first, but growing louder, that began to question the whole thing. Why should a sandwich be so fussy? Why trim away the crusts, slice the cucumber so thin, use such fine white bread, when a hearty meat pie or a thick slice of cheese on rye could satisfy the stomach far better, and the host or hostess arranging the sandwiches just so on a silver tray, ready to present them to a room full of people who might not even notice, or perhaps would pretend not to notice, because noticing too much would break the spell. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much of life is spent performing these quiet little rituals, building small moments of elegance, not because they're necessary, but because they give us the feeling that we are a little more than just creatures who eat and sleep, that we are people who choose to eat cucumber sandwiches in the afternoon light, not because we're hungry, but because we're part of a story, a tradition, a scene set just so. And yet, not everyone was convinced by the charms of the cucumber sandwich. You recall reading about how, as the Victorian era gave way to the bustling, grittier world of the Edwardians, there were voices, soft at first but growing louder, that began to question the whole thing. Why should a sandwich be so fussy? Why trim away the crusts, slice the cucumber so thin, use such fine white bread, when a hearty meat pie or a thick slice of cheese on rye could satisfy the stomach far better? Some historians still debate whether the cucumber sandwich was a holdover of a more delicate, slower age, an echo of a time when leisure was a performance and hunger itself was a kind of social threat. A sandwich, after all, is a humble thing, but make it too humble, too practical, and it loses its charm. A cucumber sandwich was a compromise, a way to nibble without truly eating, to fill the time without filling the belly. You picture a group of servants in the kitchen, watching from the shadows as the guests nibble their delicate bites, whispering to one another with a mixture of amusement and disdain. One might mutter, "Imagine going home hungry after all that," while another rolls their eyes at the absurdity of slicing cucumbers so thin you could read a newspaper through them. And yet they'd return the next day, slicing, buttering, arranging, because that was the way of things. And isn't that what so much of life is in the end? A quiet, steady dance between what we need and what we choose to do anyway. The cucumber sandwich, for all its blandness, wasn't about sustenance. It was about signaling, about participating in a game everyone agreed to play, even if no one really knew why. You lean back in your chair, the wicker cool against your skin, and let the thought drift through you. The cucumber sandwich, a symbol of elegance, or just a strange, slightly soggy reminder that sometimes we like our lives to have rules, even if they're silly ones. The breeze stirs again, soft and fleeting, and you feel the night pressing gently in around you. The garden is a dark blur now, the shapes of trees and hedges dissolving into shadow. And somewhere in the distance, the faintest sound of an owl's call drifts through the air, low and steady. You let your breath slow, your body softening into the quiet, and the thought of cucumber sandwiches lingers. A cool, crisp little wisp of a thing, so small, so absurd, and yet so very human. The garden has faded now into a deeper quiet, the kind where even the air feels slower, heavier, as if the night itself has wrapped its arms around the world and whispered, "Rest." You breathe in, long and slow, the air cool against your skin, carrying a faint scent of damp earth, of grass just beginning to gather dew. Somewhere, far off, a dog barks, once, twice, and then the sound is swallowed by the stillness. You glance down at your hands resting on your lap, fingers slightly curled, and think once more about those cucumber sandwiches, how they've lingered in your mind like a soft, pale ghost throughout the evening. It's strange, isn't it, how something so simple can become so complicated. The sandwich itself is barely there. Bread, butter, cucumber. That's it. And yet, here you are, sitting in the dark, turning it over in your mind like a small, smooth stone, tracing the edges of the story it holds. And there's another little detail, one that makes you pause for a moment. Did you know that, in some circles, cucumber sandwiches were considered unsuitable for the working class? That's right. The very idea that someone without the proper breeding, the proper refinement, might sit down and enjoy a cucumber sandwich was enough to make certain Victorian ladies clutch their pearls, so to speak. It wasn't just the food, it was what the food represented. You imagine it, a young servant girl, perhaps, stealing a bite of a leftover sandwich from a tray in the kitchen, her fingers trembling slightly as she lifts it to her mouth, knowing that in that small act, she's tasting something forbidden. Not because the sandwich itself is rare or expensive, but because it belongs to a world she's not supposed to be part of. And you wonder, as you sit there in the stillness, if she thought the sandwich tasted different because of it. Some historians still debate this idea, of course, whether the cucumber sandwich was truly seen as a kind of social barrier, or whether it's just a romanticized detail we've layered onto the past. But you can't help but think there's some truth to it. After all, the cucumber sandwich wasn't hearty. It wasn't filling. It wasn't meant to sustain you through hours of hard work in a field or a factory. It was ornamental, a little whisper of a snack, meant to be eaten with care, with delicacy, with a sense of knowing how to hold it, how to bite it, how to speak while eating it, or, perhaps more importantly, how not to speak. You picture a garden party, the air thick with perfume, and the rustle of silk dresses, a silver tray gliding through the crowd, offering sandwiches so small they might as well have been made for dolls. And you wonder how many people, standing there with a sandwich in hand, felt a quiet, gnawing hunger deep in their stomachs, a hunger they couldn't quite name, because it wasn't just about food. You feel that thought settle over you, soft and slow, as the breeze drifts past once more, carrying the faint scent of lavender from a distant patch of flowers. The stars above you pulse gently, quiet and steady, as if they too are part of the slow, strange story you're tracing through time. And you think maybe that's why the cucumber sandwich stayed. Not because it was delicious, not because it was nourishing, but because it was a symbol, a little edible metaphor for all the ways we try to make ourselves fit into the world, even when it feels a little absurd. A quiet reminder that sometimes we nibble at the edges of life, taking small, careful bites, hoping that by following the rules, we'll find our place at the table. You breathe in again, the air cool and still, and let that thought linger, soft and hazy, like the last fading scent of cucumber on the breeze. The night has grown so still now that it feels like the world itself is holding its breath, waiting for the next soft sound, the next faint memory to drift by. The air is cooler, brushing against your skin like a whisper, and the garden seems almost unreal in the dim light, shapes blurring, edges softening, as if the whole scene has been painted in watercolor and left to fade. You shift a little, feeling the weight of the chair beneath you, the faint hum of the earth beneath your feet, and your mind lingers once more on those cucumber sandwiches, fragile as lace, light as a sigh. And here's another odd little fact, the kind that makes you tilt your head and smile into the darkness. At the very height of their popularity, cucumber sandwiches were seen as a mark of good breeding, not just because of the ingredients, or the careful slicing, or the glasshouses humming with warmth, but because they were so unnecessary. That's the thing, isn't it? In a world where many labored for their meals, where food was fuel, where bread was thick and butter was precious, the cucumber sandwich was an edible wink, a way to say, we don't need to eat in the way others do. We can nibble, we can linger, we can spend an entire afternoon talking about nothing at all. You imagine a Victorian hostess glancing around her tea table, a faint, satisfied smile playing at the corners of her mouth, as she watches her guests lift their sandwiches with practiced grace, taking small, careful bites that leave no crumbs, no smudges, no awkward moments. The sandwiches are perfect, light, pale, and precise. But you wonder, too, about the moments that cracked that perfect surface. The times when someone, perhaps a child, perhaps a guest unfamiliar with the rules, took a sandwich in a slightly awkward way, bit too large a piece, let a crumb fall onto the tablecloth. Did the conversation falter? Did a glance pass between the ladies at the table? A small, sharp flicker of judgment that vanished as quickly as it appeared? Some historians still argue about whether the cucumber sandwich was a true status symbol or simply a fad that caught on because it was easy, light, and, most importantly, unthreatening. But you can't help but think that for many it was a symbol, not of wealth necessarily, but of belonging, of knowing the rules, of being able to participate in a world where everything had its place. And yet, for all its delicacy, the cucumber sandwich couldn't last forever. As the world changed, industries booming, cities growing, wars looming, the slow, genteel afternoons of cucumber sandwiches began to fade. People wanted heartier food, bolder flavors, meals that filled the belly rather than simply filling the silence. The cucumber sandwich, with its thin, watery slices and its faintly absurd elegance, slowly became a relic of a time that had drifted quietly into the past. You let that thought settle in, soft and quiet, as you feel the night pressing gently in around you. The air is cooler now, the stars above twinkling faintly in a sky so dark it feels like velvet. Somewhere, far off, you hear the distant, rhythmic clop of a horse's hooves on cobblestone, steady, deliberate, fading slowly into the distance. And you think about the stories we tell ourselves, the rituals we keep, the small, strange habits we cling to, the ways we signal who we are, even in the quietest moments. A cucumber sandwich, after all, isn't just a cucumber sandwich. It's a pause, a performance, a soft, pale little bite that says, "I understand. I belong. I know how to hold this delicate thing without breaking it." And as the breeze stirs the leaves above you, carrying the faintest, almost forgotten scent of cucumber, you feel it. That strange, comforting knowledge that even the smallest, quietest things can hold meaning. The night has grown so quiet now that you can almost hear your own breath, soft and slow, mingling with the faintest rustle of leaves and the distant hum of the world beyond the garden walls. The stars above shimmer faintly, their light so far away, so gentle, that it feels more like a memory than a presence. The air has cooled, brushing against your skin like a soft sigh, and the world feels suspended in that perfect in-between moment where everything is still, waiting for nothing in particular, content to simply be. You let your eyes drift closed for a moment, feeling the weight of the evening settle into your bones, and you think once more of the cucumber sandwich, how it lingered, quiet and unassuming, in the middle of so many lives, so many stories. How it became more than just bread and cucumber. It became a symbol, a ritual, a small, pale slice of the Victorian imagination. You picture it one last time, a tray gliding through the air on a servant's hands, the silver gleaming in the afternoon light, the sandwiches arranged in neat, careful rows, crusts trimmed away, butter barely visible, cucumber slices so thin you could almost see the threads of the tablecloth beneath them. A lady lifts one with delicate fingers, her pinky extended just slightly, her gaze drifting across the garden as if the sandwich itself were part of the scenery, a detail in a carefully curated tableau. And you wonder, did anyone ever truly taste the cucumber sandwich? Did they let the faint, watery crunch linger on their tongue, savor the cool, almost grassy note of the cucumber, or the whisper of butter softening the bread? Or was it simply there, a prop, a placeholder, a thing to hold while you spoke of the weather, or the Queen, or the latest scandal whispered behind gloved hands? A clean, straightforward tone with very little vocal ornamentation. Warm timbre, rich and comforting, creating a sense of closeness and intimacy. Slight nasal resonance, a gentle nasal quality that adds character without sounding harsh. Slowly pacing, 100 to 120 words per minute. Deliberate, unhurried delivery. Each word is given space, fostering relaxation. Monotone rhythm. Consistent pitch and volume throughout, like a soft lullaby that soothes rather than excites. Some historians still debate whether the cucumber sandwich was a culinary marvel or a quiet joke, an edible expression of a society so obsessed with appearances that it could turn even a vegetable into a symbol of status. But you think, perhaps, it was both. A little absurd, a little lovely. A reminder that we humans have always been very good at taking small, simple things and giving them layers of meaning, turning them into stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we value. You breathe in, long and slow, the scent of earth and cooling grass filling your lungs, and you let yourself feel the weight of it all. The cucumber sandwiches, the quiet rituals, the soft, careful afternoons that once unfolded beneath the wide sky. And as the breeze drifts past you one last time, you feel the story fade too, softly, gently, like the last trace of cucumber on your fingertips, like the faintest echo of laughter carried away on the night air. The garden blurs, the edges dissolve, and the world slips into a quiet hum of stars and breath and the slow, steady rhythm of time itself. You let the thought drift, light and easy, as if it could float away on the breeze. And you feel your body relax into the stillness, your mind softening at the edges, the last remnants of the day dissolving into the quiet. There's no need to hold on to the story now. Let it slip away. Let it melt into the night. Let the world grow soft and dim and distant. And as your breath slows, and the quiet deepens, and the stars shimmer softly overhead, you let go. Let go. Let the garden fade. Let the sandwiches fade. Let the world fade. Just breathe.